We're at the top of the hour, so we can go ahead and get started, and we might have others join us as we start. We're grateful to you for joining us for session S3. We have two presentations in this session. We're going to be starting with Taking Small Steps Toward Big Change, a grassroots WAC effort from Kim Panacey and Emily Wazewski from Seton Hill. And then we'll go to Ecologies of a Growing Writing Internship Program, a conversation about successes and challenges across campuses, from Barbara George and Uma Krishnan at Kent State. We're going to wait until both presentations are concluded to take questions, but feel free to put your questions in the chat at any time, and then our presenters will answer them at the end. So I'll now pass it over to Kim and Emily.
Thank you, thank you. I'm just gonna please share my screen here. And if you can give me a thumbs up if you see the slides. Okay, perfect. Like I just said, Kim Panacey and I are from the same institution, Seton Hill University, and I will go ahead and let Kim introduce herself.
Hi, everybody. I'm Kim Panacey. I'm the Writing Center Director from Seton Hill, not Seton Hall University, as we always say.
And I'm Emily Warshewski, and I basically anything to do with English. I'm the faculty point person at my institution. We're a small liberal arts school, like I said, outside of Pittsburgh. So I chair the English department, the first year writing program, and what our WAC program kind of is. So today, Kim and I, we work together quite a bit, and we're going to talk just about some grassroots changes and efforts that we have made sort of since I transitioned into this position a few years ago. So just to sort of start out with like why we're talking about grassroots efforts and why that's important for WAC, I put we have like a works cited page at the end of this if you want to check out these articles. But the first one that I wanted to talk about was just something that Grace Lee Boggs, who is a social activist, actually had to say about change. And I've been thinking a lot about this through all the sessions I've been to actually these past few days. Change being like a long-term goal, something that especially in academic institutions doesn't happen easily or quickly, but has to come from within the institution and be part of the living system there. Another kind of quote that informs what we're going to talk about today is the fact that WAC itself actually started as a grassroots effort decades ago. It was something that just sort of grew out of the desires of, faculty who were working in these areas. They saw a need for it, and they made small grassroots sort of changes to push toward national change. I think that we saw that kind of in the opening keynote a few days ago, discussion about that from folks who've been in the field for a long time. And then finally, in this piece by Cox, Galen, and Melzer, they talk about how, especially when it comes to WAC, a grassroots approach, again, like a small approach within an institution toward change, is really necessary to create a sustainable program. So it's not only necessary to kind of get it off the ground, but to keep it going and make it sustainable. Grassroots is where you need to be concentrating your efforts. So I'm just going to talk for a couple of minutes about some of the challenges that I came into in this position. It's been about 5, maybe 6 years since I sort of transitioned into this job, and then how I have worked in some grassroots efforts in order to push back on some of these challenges and things Kim and I have done together to do that. So like many small institutions, we do not have financial support in any way, shape, or form for a WAC initiative. We have zero money, we have no budget, and the university is not supportive of giving us any money. but they do want us to be doing something, which is sort of ironic, right? So we don't get financial support. We also don't get support on the academic end, really. So there is a general sense, I think, among the faculty and administration that writing is something that students need to work on. But when it comes to like, oh, so could we add some extra classes or can we change some things about the classes, then we tend to get a lot of resistance. Sort of going along with that, course caps are definitely part of that. When the Writing Intensive Program was formed, it's been about 11, maybe 12 years now. Course caps of 18 students were part of the, or 24 students, excuse me, were part of the deal. Those are not honored across the disciplines whatsoever. So in some areas, like in English, for instance, where we have smaller numbers in our major, it's easy to uphold the course caps. But in the sciences, we have huge excess of students being registered over the course caps. We also have a lot of faculty just resistance because I listed for you all the jobs that I have, and that's not unique at my institution. Pretty much everyone is wearing at least 5 hats at once. And so there's a lot of over involvement and resistance because we're all busy. We have a 4-4 load. Last year it got changed to 4-5, gets back to a 4-4 now, but we're really busy. There's not a culture of writing on our campus whatsoever. And this program was developed 11 years ago and it's never been assessed. Nothing's ever been collected, no student work. There's been no overseeing of the program whatsoever. So there's a lot of challenges that we continue to kind of face. And then quickly, I just want to talk about some things that I have done in the few years that I've been in the position that I think of as kind of grassroots stuff to make small changes a little at a time. And then Kim will talk some more about the things that she's done and that she and I have done together. So one thing that I did was we had a committee, but it was just like the provost picked a couple people to be on a committee, and all that committee did was say yes or no to new course proposals for Writing Intensive. And so I made a lot of changes to the committee structure when I took over and made sure it was an elected committee, so people wanted to actually be on it, which makes a difference sometimes. We're not voluntold about our committee assignments, but actually want to do the work. We do a lot in the committee of just like reading about WAC and learning about what WAC is and just getting familiar with that before we do the work every time the membership changes. We came up with a charter and a mission statement and like some learning goals for the program, which we didn't have before. And we kind of decided as a group that rather than just rubber stamping proposals, we wanted to do more than that and really help to, combat some of those challenges by creating more of a culture of writing on our campus and helping out other faculty and students and helping them to see the value of writing. And so there were a lot of committee level changes and then a lot of efforts towards mentorship for faculty teaching WAC. So I do a lot of one-on-one, just mentoring with people and looking over documents and just teaching them about WAC one-on-one. And then Kim and I do a lot together too, which she'll talk about in just a second. And before I turn it over to Kim, I put a link in the presentation to our charter, but just to sort of highlight some stuff that we came up with together. This took like several meetings, several months for us to just decide what was it that we wanted to be our like scope and aim as a committee. And everything kind of came from the committee rather than me as the pretty much besides for Kim, the only person who knew anything about WAC, telling folks what we were going to do. We kind of decided together what our goals were. And then we reset specific goals every year when we meet for our first meeting.
So along with what I, as the Writing Center Director, can do to support those things that Emily has talked about to move our WAC program forward, I also try to affect some change from the Writing Center end. And so, I just kind of grounded this in some theory. Joan Mullen and Mickey Harris, as they say, it makes sense for the Writing Center to collaborate with WAC programs, and through that partnership, along with others, we hope to contribute to that culture of writing, try to develop that a little bit more strongly on our campus. So on the next slide, you'll see some of the grassroots efforts that we have made through the Writing Center. And, again, a lot of these things a lot of writing centers do these, but I think just the combination of them really help with that. We make sure to try to recruit and hire student staff from a variety of disciplines, and that's, actively reaching out to faculty members so they feel like a part of the process too. We make sure to develop the student staff in those different types of writing that they'll be doing for different fields, particularly as we get newer staff, they're so used to like, this is the way you write. It's like, well, it depends, right? So we provide resources for faculty and, books. We have a faculty resource page on our website that they can go to. And some of the website content, I think that is kind of particular to our institution, and I think really helps with the buy-in, is that we include sites recommended by faculty members and attributed them to them. There's several up there that's like, Emily recommended this, or, Dr. Eichenberger recommended this. So I think that helps. And then we also have faculty videos. We've asked some of our faculty to do videos about writing in their particular field, and particularly the classes that they teach. Most of them are in the Writing Intensive program, but doesn't have to be. So I think that helps them think about too, like, what am I going to say in these videos? We do some minimal assignment review. We have done a faculty survey we just did this past spring. We're still analyzing the results, and I think it's going to show some interesting things just about faculty's approach to writing, what they value in writing, and what they see as students' issues. I'm hoping to find some avenues to share that, probably in small groups, as everything that we do is kind of, again, that grassroots thing. And just, I think, the ability to have conversations about writing, we're open to that. I had a faculty member call me the other day to just ask some questions about, he wants to develop his students' writing, and, do I have any suggestions? Do I have any ideas for him? So I think that, that's a good indication of how open they feel to reach out to us. And the final thing I have on this list, which I'm going to detail more, is the in-class workshops, because I think, to me, that's one of the key things that really helps us develop writing across the curriculum. So for the in-class workshops, next slide, Emily, please. There are the things that I really want to key in on here. There's a list of some of the courses and disciplines and the different assignments and topics. I'm not going to go through all those, but I think the key things I want to touch on here are that these aren't canned workshops. It's not like, oh, I'm going to go in and talk about thesis statements. They're tailored to the particular courses and particular assignments, and they're developed with the faculty having input. So I sit down with a faculty member. We talk about, what are you seeing in the students' writing that you're concerned about? What would you like them to work on? What assignments are they doing that we can talk about? So it's very related to a particular assignment that the students are doing, and we want them to work on that own writing. Again, we're not going to develop a handout to take in and say, like, here, let's work on this handout and show you. It's something they're actually doing. And we incorporate active learning too. So we might do something. One example of a workshop that we do is students will bring in an annotated bibliography that they've been working on, and then we do some things with, having them list some of the topics and highlighting where they see that in the annotated bibliography, and then that helps them turn it into a literature review. So they know that they're synthesizing different sources instead of just going with, here's what this source says, and then here's what this source says. So they're, that's the kind of active learning we do in this workshop. So in all these types of services that we do definitely yield some positive results for us. We want to move on to the next slide. So these are some of the things that we see. We see that the faculty have a stronger understanding of authentic writing tasks, that those things like purpose and audience. As an example of that, one of the workshops we've done was a parent handbook with the education class. And the faculty, that was great. They were using an authentic writing task. But when the faculty member and I started talking about doing a workshop, she gave me an example of what she thought was a good one. And there was all kinds of educational jargon in it. And there was all kinds of, theory and things like that, that I was like, well, wait a minute, Kathy, like, is this really what you would want to go to parents? And so, again, I think she then kind of now understands that. And we've done that workshop year after year after year. Identifying, again, like when we sit down to do those workshops, we talk about what are concerns and how do you evaluate writing. One of the accounting professors brought me, when he first started working with me, he brought me 2 student papers, one which was a good paper and one which was a not so good paper. And the good paper to him was mechanically sound, but there really wasn't much content in it. Where the other paper that he found like just, appalling was what had some really good thoughts in it, but because of the mechanical issues, he just couldn't get past those. And so he just said the paper wasn't good. And so, but now, after working with him for several years, I think he's recognized that. So now when we look at student papers together, he's like right on the, being very accurate with what he's seeing in the papers and being able to talk about it more clearly. I think also doing these workshops in all different types of things reinforces that idea that writing occurs across the curriculum. And, all these things, along with those videos and the links and the faculty that are so excited when I hire somebody that they've recommended, that helps them feel that they're contributing partners to that idea of writing on campus. And, I know the conversations about writing is a repeat of what I said earlier, that we allow that to happen, but it's a positive result. Like we are having those conversations about writing. So along with these efforts that we're making, that Emily's doing her own grassroots efforts, I'm doing my own, but we support each other in those. But then we also do things in collaboration. So we can go to the next slide, Emily. So some of the things that we do in collaboration are, one of the main things we have done is a lot of workshops. So that list of workshops at the top are some of the topics that we've done. Some of them we've done multiple times. Those are based primarily on what faculty see as their needs, the writing intensive faculty, but other faculty too. We're hearing from them that, I need help on how do I give feedback. And we kind of target these and develop them based on our own skills too. So the peer and instructor conferencing, Emily talks more about the instructor part of that, and she'll go into the details about like, how do you prepare students for conference? What do you do during a conference when you're meeting one-on-one with a student? And I do the peer conferencing more because that overlaps so much with what I do in the Writing Center and training my student writing consultants about giving feedback to peers. So, it's a great partnership because I think we're both, building on our strengths and talking about what we know the best of, and providing tips for the faculty too. Other things that we've done is just some informal lunch discussions. The chemistry curriculum meeting that's on this list is something that came out of those other workshops. We had a faculty member who came to a bunch of those and then, followed up and came to us and said, we're working on our program review and figuring out how we want to scaffold assignments so that people can write better in chemistry. And so they brought Emily and I in to do some workshopping with them on that. So it wasn't something we just decided to present, but we were asked to come in. And then Emily and I worked together to try to bring in an external expert. Dana Driscoll was able to come and do a workshop with us. A little bit of funding for me. Emily found some funding. We did the best we could and brought her to campus, and she was able to do workshop with a bunch of faculty members and my Writing Center staff, which was, great for them. I didn't have to try to find money to take them to a conference. And we just had something right here. So that was great. The presentations off campus, again, that doesn't seem like we're building as much maybe on campus, but that recognition that we are presenting at conferences like this one. Emily arranged for us to go to a local high school to do a presentation. And I think some of that just helps add credibility to the idea that, we're not just making this stuff up, that writing is important. right? So, we try to keep doing all these workshops. And I think, the whole grassroots idea, we don't have great turnout at these workshops. We have some people who come over and over and over again. That's fine. At least they come. And I think to me, even though a bunch of people aren't there, it's really rewarding to me when I hear somebody say like, hey, you remember you taught us this at that workshop? And, whether it's in a later workshop or in some other context, and that's always like, okay, they got something out of it. They've learned something out of it. Just like when you hear students say that too. So I think even though these are, again, small things, I think they do impact. And I do hear from faculty that they've heard from other faculty members too. Like, oh, I heard you did a really good workshop for so-and-so. And yeah, so I think there is that ripple effect. So I guess moving forward, to me, we continue to do the grassroots stuff as much as we can. And I don't know, Emily, do you have any other thoughts about either the collaborations that we do? I think we would love to have more funding. we would make it work if we had that. We were just in Liz Wardle's session and her talking about what they do there. And I'm like, yeah, I know. We were texting each other saying like, yeah, it'd be nice to have all that, right? But, we try to make it work. And I think we do have some impact.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're right. And I think that's a perfect note to sort of end on, is that we, in spite of a lack of resources, I think grassroots efforts is one way to sort of push back against that. And with like the workshops that we do, you're talking about low attendance. I think it's important to note, we also, when there's new faculty, we like jump on that right away. We make sure that we meet with them and talk to them. Kim does an amazing job of really making sure they feel like they have a resource in her and in the Writing Center. And I think, gradually, as people who've been there longer, start to move toward retirement, that we'll have, like, we increase, that our numbers by doing that. So that's a good strategy also.
All right, I think we're good. If we want to move on to the other presentation, I think we decided we're going to save, just to reiterate, we're going to save questions till the end.
Thank you so much, Kim and Emily. And as we're transitioning, our next presentation is recorded. And so Caleb will be starting that for us.
And I wanted to add that I added the link to our presentation also in the chat.
Hello, my name is Dr. Barbara George, and with Dr. Uma Krishnan, our presentation is entitled Ecologies of a Growing Writing Internship Program, a conversation about successes and challenges across campuses. And we are based from Kent State University. Dr. Krishnan is at the Kent campus, and I am at a regional Salem campus, which is much smaller. So we're discussing what is called the Writing Internship Program, which we now have at many campuses at Kent, and WAC, Writing Across the Curriculum. So this presentation explores the growth of a writing internship program initiative within both a large campus and smaller regional campus system. By exploring programming at different scales, we show how growing writing internship opportunities can serve as a successful example of writing across the curriculum, particularly at institutions with no official WAC program. We share case studies to clarify what it means to establish and sustain programs at various campuses. And we talk about ecological frameworks. So this slide is entitled Ecological Interactions and Growth of WAC, or we can also call this the WIP, the Writing Internship Program, across two campuses. So how do we think about this ecological framework? So just as writing can be considered to be ecological, we ground our presentation in an ecological metaphor to discuss ways complex and multiple ecological interactions occur across campuses and disciplines to support a growing writing internship program. This includes communicating the possibilities of the internship models to various academic disciplines and to prospective intern placement locations. It also includes student recruitment, marketing, and program reporting.
For framing our presentation, we now move from understanding ecological metaphor in terms of writing to showcase how the ecological interactions are implemented in real life in the Writing Internship Program across two specific campuses, across departments, across students, site supervisors, business venues, and how we work on and off campus. And also the purpose is to showcase the process of what we do in terms of student recruitment, marketing, developing, and reporting. The first case study focuses on the growth of the Writing Internship Program at the Kent State University Central Campus location, Kent. And basically, we showcase how I reorganized and recalibrated the program and aligned it more with the WAC goals in terms of objectives and key results. So what did it mean if I had to align it with WAC goals? So this meant I had to constantly think about what does it mean to have a successful program? How do we help our students to write across curriculum and beyond as they enter the workforce? What can we do to prepare them for the next phase of their life? This meant that I had to start working with department administrators across campuses, invite new internship partners, approach and recruit students, and market the program for students across the university, across departments, and not just for our department, the English department. I say this because the internship program was established in the year 1996 by Dr. Christina Haas, and it was housed then in the writing English department, and it still is housed in that. And we have not had an opportunity to have a writing across curriculum separate unit. So given that, I had to think about how can this be a smaller program under this scaffolded under a larger program. So based on this outlook, we now showcase how students' understanding of their own professional writing in conjunction with their own emerging scholarly and professional identity enable them to complete their writing internships successfully on and off campus in different departments. So when we started thinking about the Writing Internship Program acting as the writing across curriculum, what were the key takeaways that we had to think about? So when I was asked to lead this program, the three things that came to my mind was what should be the end goal? So keeping the end goal in mind, what I did over a period of 2 years and based on the aggregate on the data, what I can say is interns basically gain tools, what Beserman refers to as only by making these worlds, outside worlds, social worlds, accessible to our students can we provide them means to live within them and exercise the powerful forms of inquiry that shape our contemporary forms of life. And this is what interns try to achieve when they're placed at different internship sites. So they basically understand, relate, learn, acquire, analyze, write, and create materials and texts that cater to their new audience. And they become young professionals in the field. And this in turn makes them, provides them new set of writing tools and a recognition that writing is a technology that can be used across different mediums and the confidence to develop texts that cater to their new audience. And even a recognition that professional world requires writing across curriculum and writing across different professional and social formats. Given than this, I just want to show you how the goal was, how it had, even the website had to be changed. And this is now the current website, and the marketing materials were also created. And as one can see, it caters to, we have so many departments now, and we have testimonials of students completing this program very successfully, and how they have gone on to getting jobs in the fields, so which I discuss a little later. So as we mentioned earlier, how do students use their professional writing tools to write across curriculum? This is an example of Olivia Farina, who is a third-year honor student. Rather, she's a senior, and she's enrolled in the program again because she was able to write for the WIC Poetry Center in a different way. She was able to cater to her audience, rather middle school students, and to others. So she created this website, and she learned how to produce material for the social media and for younger students and for adults in general. And then, of course, there are more successful stories, like this student Grace, who wrote for the School of Art. She actually got a job after she started writing different types of samples that are provided. And then Olivia, another student, she wrote for the Honors College. And then Whitney wrote for she started creating social media posts. So what these different students showcase is that they are able to engage with their new types of audience in different ways and different mediums. And of course, we have more successful stories in terms of how students have gone on and been employed as content developers or communication directors or grant writing specialists or marketing associates, editors and copywriters. So students have done more than what they were expected, and they kind of recognize that writing internships doesn't mean just writing for a certain type of audience, but writing across curriculum, across mediums, across genres for other types of people and audiences. So the importance of rhetoric comes in. And then, of course, the internship has its own set of challenges in terms of how we can sustain the program, how can we motivate students, and then, of course, in terms of administration, acceptance, there are still issues and departmental support, colleagues, dissemination of information in terms of how can they help us is still a challenge.
Thank you so much, Uma. So in each case study, we're sharing tools for our Writing Internship Program outreach. So you saw some of Uma's, including the digital modes of communication. So Uma had a website and she had a paper brochure when she came to our campus. We also discuss, as we've already begun, both successes and challenges in each case study. So I would like to move us to case study 2 at Kent State Salem. So aside from the main campus, Kent State has 8 regional campuses with English programs on each campus. So there's an English major and minor on each campus. Currently, several regional campuses have a version of the WIP program, the Writing Internship Program. At Kent Salem, when I heard that Uma was interested in coming, which was fantastic that she would come to our campus, I knew, along with my colleagues at Kent Salem, that we wanted to network or grow the opportunity for students to have the WIP program on their campuses as well, particularly because these campuses are largely serving students who they can't afford to go to the Kent campuses. These students come often from underserved communities, etc. So we wanted to make sure, especially with an English major, that these students were having this opportunity to, perhaps become professional and find a job, etc. And that's what Uma was able to bring to our campus. So the second case study focuses on the growth of the Writing Internship Program at a small regional campus. In this case study, we discussed building the program by communicating with various disciplines on a campus with a clear medical and education focus, and implementing scaffolding to encourage students to consider writing within and outside of local communities. So most of the English program was very heavy, and it's a great program on creative writing, which is fantastic. But what we found is that often students would graduate and perhaps not go to graduate school, or take several years to think about going to graduate school. And so we wanted to make sure that they had other options, or perhaps not enter into a workforce that had to do with writing. So we invited Dr. Krishnan, who, by the way, did outreach for us. So she let us know that she was willing to come to our campus, which was really important, that we knew that someone would come to our campus. So we invited Dr. Krishnan, after she let us know that she would come, to visit our professional writing class. She shared brochures, application materials, etc., about the WIP. So she made the process very transparent. So students do have to apply, but she was very clear about the application process. When she came to our campus, Dr. Krishnan met with two potential partners, the nursing and radiology department heads and the academic learning commons coordinator. So that's where students go for tutoring, or the library, things like that. And with both of these department heads, she shared successes from other campuses. She also met with the assistant dean. And I would say that meeting in person was highly engaging for students, for faculty, for staff. I should add administration in there. Once students were identified, we moved forward with pairing them. So one student, I should change that, initially wanted to serve as an intern with the nursing program, but we found we had to be very flexible. She then changed her mind. She was not comfortable with entering into the nursing department because she didn't know the department heads, and she did know the head of the ALC. So we had to understand that at times our students would help us to help them make a placement. And then another student who initially was interested found a paid internship elsewhere. In fact, he's still in that paid internships, and that's fine. You know, we want our students to find what's best for them. So we approach this ecologically with flexibility. All students who engaged took the WIP class with Dr. Krishnan while working with the ALC coordinator, one each semester. Because the course was not offered at a regional campus, it was more expensive for students. So I had to be ready. Actually, process. When she came to our campus, Dr. Krishnan met with two potential partners, the nursing and radiology department heads and the academic learning commons coordinator. So that's where students go for tutoring, or the library, things like that. And with both of these department heads, she shared successes from other campuses. She also met with the assistant dean. And I would say that meeting in person was highly engaging for students, for faculty, for staff. I should add administration in there. Once students were identified, we moved forward with pairing them. So one student, I should change that, initially wanted to serve as an intern with the nursing program, but we found we had to be very flexible. She then changed her mind. She was not comfortable with entering into the nursing department because she didn't know the department heads, and she did know the head of the ALC. So we had to understand that at times our students would help us to help them make a placement. And then another student who initially was interested found a paid internship elsewhere. In fact, he's still in that paid internships, and that's fine. You know, we want our students to find what's best for them. So we approach this ecologically with flexibility. All students who engaged took the WIP class with Dr. Krishnan while working with the ALC coordinator, one each semester. Because the course was not offered at a regional campus, it was more expensive for students. So I had to be ready. Actually, I wrote a proposal to cover the funding for these 2 students. And this was a very important deal for the students. Spending more money to take a class was not something these students could afford. So again, just really noting flexibility, that when we start these programs, there are hidden kind of complications that will pop up and need to be addressed. So students were able to engage in a variety of initiatives while they were working with the ALC, including a social media campaign for the Writing Center, the development of the campus's first literary journal. That was very exciting. And then the student who took the independent internship outside of our program was able to publish writing and engage in workplace writing. He's still doing that. And here's an example of our literary journal off to the left, and off to the right, a newspaper story written by the 3rd student who opted for an independent internship. So what are the constraints of doing? So these are very successful. We have students publishing, we have highly interactive literary journal. We had over 50 entries of art and poetry and short stories. But this takes work. So we do need to acknowledge the constraints. The work is labor intensive. We're not always given a load release for doing this kind of work. We find that sometimes we have a difficult time talking to our colleagues about how this work fits into notions of English literature, writing studies, and creative writing. So we really had to make explicit how much work some of this was. Okay, so I know for the literary journal, students were putting in images. It takes a lot of time to do that kind of, putting an image into the pamphlets that Uma showed, or to the left, the Black Squirrel Scholars. Creating even the first page of that is very labor intensive. It's not exactly writing though. Sometimes it's images. So how to explain to our colleagues that that's also labor, and that needs to be a part of composing. On the other hand, in terms of ecologies, we see growth in other disciplines and in the workforce, responding to a variety of textual and multimodal communication. So Marilyn Cooper proposes an understanding that writing ecologies interact in very varied ways within social systems in and out of the classroom as dynamic webs where meaning might be made through moves by individuals to write within, or at times to challenge a genre. And in the end, we believe that this work can be considered seeds for what we hope is a larger WAC program that can continue to benefit students. So we've really seen successes on both campuses. Students are doing real writing, they're finding real jobs, they're doing that any other writing wouldn't be real. But sometimes we are expanding the notion of writing beyond writing for a class or for a professor. As Uma noted, writing rhetorically for a wider audience. And, WAC, although we don't have an official WAC program at our university, we hope that we're setting the seeds for something that will grow in future years. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much, Uma and Barbara. And we've got about 15 minutes for questions. I have a few questions for our presenters, but I'm more interested to know what other questions people have. Since we're a small group, I'll just invite you, if you have a question, to either unmute yourself and ask it aloud or to ask it in the chat.
I have a couple of questions. I clicked on video, but there it goes. Okay. Just click again, persistence, right? So for Uma and Barbara, this sounds really cool. I'm at a community college, so I'm not sure exactly how it's all going to work, but we do have internships that are set up through our career services program. And so I'm thinking maybe I could work with them in some way. But I have two questions. One is, would you be willing to put the link to your student application in the chat, because that would be helpful as a model. And then the second question is, how many credits is that course that you guys teach, and what does that involve, the WIP course?
It's basically a 3 credit hour course, and students work 10 hours per week in different sites. And after that, beyond that, they don't work. And so in 3 credit hours, basically for 15 weeks, they work as if they're going for a class. So, but they will be going there. And in addition to that, they have to attend mandatory meetings with me every other week for one hour to learn what is required. For example, a student, let's say she is in a department of Jewish studies, for example. She doesn't know the rhetorical moves she has to make for Jewish studies, but she has to write a newsletter for them. So how do you help her? So what I do is during those meetings, I work with her and I tell her, well, this is the way you will see what's the upper level, the larger scaffolding has to be done. And then to show her the nuances that has to be made within that. So we had a student, Catherine, who worked there and she learned how to write across for the Jewish studies. So, and because she worked with me, so the mandatory meetings, that's where they help. So they're 1 hour, so 10 hours plus 1 hour every week or every other week. And then at the end of it, they do a project, which is basically they submit that to the department. For example, Catherine submitted something to the Jewish studies of all the writing she had done throughout the piece of 15 weeks so that she could showcase her work of writing. And every student does that. At the end of the semester, they have to do that. Like Barbara's students, both of them had to produce a portfolio, which they had to showcase how they wrote across curriculum, what are the different types of writing they did. So it's not necessarily catering to writing just papers or anything. It's large, the scope is large. And that's what actually helps them. And they take these portfolios for jobs. When they apply for jobs, they say, hey, this is what I'm very capable of writing across curriculum, different genres, and this is what I did. And that's what procures them the job. So we are thinking, yeah, go ahead, Barbara, you want to add?
I put the link in the chat, and I want to note that Uma and I think some of your students might have helped you too really develop this in the last few years. Or was it all you, Uma? I know they developed all you.
Because students, I have not been assigned. Every time I want an intern for myself, they are like, no, you can't have an intern. You should place them somewhere. So I had, even this semester, actually, I have to tell Barbara, she doesn't know. Just today, Whitney said she can't be in the program. So it's a challenge we are facing that students, they might join sometimes, but then they will not. How do you sustain a program? This is something that we are struggling. And it's across campus, it's the same thing. So I have been very fortunate that at least I've had 10 students over a period of, from the time I joined, I took over. So that's what, so Dan, you can actually talk to people and say, hey, here is a program that, we are thinking more in terms of how writing across curriculum enables students to procure jobs in their future. I think that's the way to market this, because I think WAC has to come up with, that's why I wanted to actually talk to others too, that we have to market this program within our administrations in a different way. And it's like, when I talked to one of my colleagues, she said it's like a medicine pill that you need to coat it with sugar and give it to the administrators. I said, well, that's a good analogy I should use.
That's very true. Thank you so much. I appreciate all that.
Thank you. And thanks, Barbara, for posting the link.
I have a question for all of the presenters about motivating faculty. Both of your presentations talked about the importance of building relationships. So Uma and Barbara building these relationships with other departments to get them on board for internships. Kim and Emily just getting faculty to opt in when they're so overworked. So I wonder, and maybe we could start with Emily and Kim, how do you motivate faculty to be open to something new when their plates are already full?
It's a really great question. I wish I had a better answer to, because it's one that we struggle with constantly. We, for a while, were able to offer free, like we were doing the workshop during lunchtime and paying for faculty to grab a lunch and then come sit down and talk to us. And that worked really good. So food is always a motivator. We definitely have had good luck with that. And then I also think just like what Kim does with the classroom visits, and then she does the mentoring too. We both do, just like one-on-one. We'll look at your syllabi and assignments and give you feedback. When that helps out a faculty member, then the word of mouth gets around in that department. That's really helpful too. Like, oh, you're struggling with this assignment, you should, go talk to Kim. And go ahead, Kim, if you have.
Yeah, I was just going to piggyback on that and say, I think, we try to kind of really bill it so that we're going to help take away some of their frustrations. So I think, like if they're, a lot of times we hear from faculty, like the one who called me last week, like my students' writing is just bad. Like, what can I do to make it better? I'm tired of writing comments. So then, particularly when we're doing workshops, we often try to talk about things that are, possibly time savers, or, like don't comment on every single thing in the paper. Julie, I was thinking of you and your presentation yesterday about the do better, but not, and I'm going to forget the phrase, if you can jump in and give it to me again, but
teach less better.
Yes, teach less better. See, I knew I was going to mess that up. I told her yesterday that was going to be my new mantra, because I think that really does like comment less better. Or, like we try to talk about them doing workshops or conferencing, and, they're like, oh, I don't know if I can take time out of class to do a workshop. And I'll be like, well, but if you address a bunch of things in a workshop in one class period, you don't have to write it on 20 papers. Like, so I think just trying to, motivate them that way about how this is going to benefit them to do that. And even like, talking about writing to learn, like it doesn't have to be, I think so often they think about writing assignments as being something extra, instead of like, but this can help the students learn to do this.
Yeah. And we try to build the workshops that way, like into the title, time-saving tips for giving feedback. And they'll be, oh, okay, maybe I'll show up for that. The more that we can show them how to be more efficient and, give more quality and get better results from their students, the more likely they are to participate too.
Barbara, do you want to go? You have to unmute yourself.
I actually had another question for Kim and Emily. So if you want to add to what they have already said, I want to follow up with a question for them.
I've been very fortunate. I've been literally going to campuses and finding out who's the person in charge. And I'm very fortunate that I found, Barbara is a wonderful colleague who's so receptive. And we both think alike. So sometimes we'll just sit in the library and chat about our frustrations. And it's a lot of conviction has to take place. And that's what it's interesting that other departments are willing to have these interns. They want these writing modes of writing, everything. They're ready to have workshops. But across campuses, there is resistance even within our department. So I think it's what we call trickle-down economics. I think slowly, it'll come down. So little at a time. So, but I hope that I do have to say, give credit to another colleague in Twinsburg campus. She's been very receptive. She has also actually introduced her students to the internship program, and they have started coming to the Kent campus. So 3 of us are kind of now trying to push this program a little bit further. So let's see, hope. And so I'm very fortunate to have Barbara as my wonderful colleague who thinks like me. So I'm grateful for that. So go ahead, Barbara.
Well, right back at you, Uma. And I think it's interesting because we're so large. I mean, we have a large main campus and then all of these other campuses. And, Kim and Emily, I think one of the benefits of where you are is that the scale is such that you can develop relationships maybe in different ways. And what I'm hearing from you, especially through the Writing Center, Kim, and my sister texted me back and said she remembers you and that she's working as an English teacher. And thanks you.
Nice.
So is Amy. It seems that you are able to, especially, through the Writing Center, not just because our Writing Center develops materials for students to come use. And this is a whole new that the Writing Center, and then Emily, you both are working in tandem with these two. That's just great. I mean, I think that's a really successful model there. You're using what already works and kind of elevating it. How long have you been running a WAC program of sorts?
Well, I guess, Emily, that's probably since you've been here, slightly, somewhat before, but
Yes, it's been around like 11, 12 years, and then I took over maybe 4 or 5 years ago. Okay, changing in my mind, but it hasn't been that long. But I think you're right. The point that you make about allyships and relationships, I think that's also really important. Like I'm so thankful to have Kim and like you were saying, Uma, sometimes needing someone to vent to about our frustrations for how things are going, and somebody who understands, WAC, which at a small campus where, pretty much everyone else in my department is like literature focused or creative writing. They don't have the background that I do. I'm so thankful to work with Kim and allyship with each other, but also with, with those faculty who are on board with what you're doing. That helps too. Cause like saying like word of mouth, that gets around, and if they can make recommendations to other faculty and urge them, sometimes that's more powerful than hearing from me for the 8,000th time that, I'm here to help you. Don't be afraid. So relationships are definitely key.
Yeah, and I agree too. And, I will say too, working with Emily has been, great. And, we were laughing as we were preparing this presentation because we're like, oh, we've done this before. We can build off of each other easily. But I think even just, doing some of those behind the scene things and knowing that, it's good to have multiple voices, like in so many of those writing intensive meetings where we're trying to discuss, at first, Emily mentioned this, like at first when we would get those proposals, it would just be like the other people on the committee would just want to rubber stamp them. And then Emily and I would push back and, and again, we would go back and forth. So it wasn't just one of us saying this, but it was like, well, what about this? And what about this? And we were trying to get them to see other things. And I think it's helped. And again, it depends. You have different groups on that. And, that was Emily having that as a rotating, membership on that committee helps too, because then you had different people, hearing that. So we'll see if that continues, I hope. Just, getting more and more people on board.
And I have to make one comment that Emily and Kim, you said, when you find new faculty, you go and approach them and say, hey, and that's what, we both are trying to do within our own campuses. Like, if we find new faculty, we try to go in before they're brainwashed by something else. We go and approach them and say, no, this is a great program.
I think we've got time for one more question if anyone else has a question for our presenters.
No questions, but thank you all. I really enjoyed your presentations today.
Thank you. Thank you so much for being part of it.
Thank you for all the work that you're doing.
And I just have to mention to Dan, if you need any help, Dan, please reach out. And, if we can all collaborate in some way, help each other, I think that's where our strength lies. And I'm so grateful for this. So please let me know. And actually, I'm going to post my email address. And Barbara, if you can write yours too. Anyway,
I think listening to Barbara and Uma, it's given me other ideas like, oh, maybe we could work more with our career office, because that seems to be an office on campus that seems to get support and get, and so I think, having something like this and they're focusing on communication being an important skill. So it's given me some new ideas of avenues to piggyback on, get some more allies.
Yes.
Well, I I want to piggyback on what you're saying, Kim, in some ways, because I am at a small campus. So it's actually easier for me to go out and meet with some of the professors we're in one building. So you're making me realize that we probably could do some WAC things on my campus that might be harder to do on the main Kent campus. So I really appreciated your presentation for that. So thank you both for that and everyone.